Hello. So today we've got Thomas Casson, who's coaching at Oxford University. So welcome, Thomas.
Evening.
Um, I wanted to touch a bit on your playbook stuff and also on the sort of unique challenges of Oxford University.
Yeah.
So firstly, sort of starting the year, how much playbook scheme stuff do you try and install on a weekly basis?
I'd say, right out of the blocks, we spend about a week or so just getting players who've never played before up to speed on, okay, right, these are the positions you can play, trying to figure out where they might suit best. And then, say, from the second week onwards, we start drilling into, say, playbook, getting installed done. Which for us is a little bit difficult because as Oxford University is quite short terms, we start really late and finish quite early. It really condenses everything and makes things a lot tougher. So in general, I mean, fortunately enough, within sort of the first week of install, we'll start with we'll install 4 defensive line stunts, we'll have installed 3 linebacker blitzes, and start working on the basics of our coverage system, our man read coverage, which fortunately enough is sort of one coverage covers a lot of our, is the vast majority of our playbook, and it's very rules dependent. So once the players have the rules down, it's just about adjusting to different formations that we see. So it's more of a progressional thing, but we will start working on that kind of stuff right from the first week. But from that first week, once we've got those sort of 4 basic stunts down, then the following week we'll maybe add 1, but we typically try and maybe spend 2 weeks going over, say, the first install package to make sure everything's sorted out. The idea, the concept is that we should be able to try and have one of our sort of packages completely what we call our game ready package, sort of all installed by then, which sort of has none of the, frills. It does the job. It covers all sort of the sides, so the aspects of what we're going to build on later on as the season progresses, and the things that the other, stance blitzes and coverages that we'll install. It's all sort of set up in that first 3 weeks, 4 weeks or so that we do.
Oh, brilliant. So I'm already going to go off a little bit off track because you spoke about personnel and that stuff fascinates me. So do you sort of base it on height and weight, or just of general feel?
So yeah, general feel, and I'd say general feel and height and weight. And it's one of these things where at the same time you can't dictate what a player wants, where they want to play. I mean, you can kind of guide them and say, look, your body type and your speed or your strength or whatever suits maybe a particular position. But if they're hell bent on playing on a position, you either lose the player, they don't want to play for you, or they will play for you in the position that they want to. And maybe down the line they'll come back to playing the position that you might have advised them that, look, you might be better off at this position really. But yeah, we try and go by height, weight and speed. With the type of players that we get, usually we get very few big people. Line is always a real issue. Playing offensive, defensive line is always a real issue for us, which is why our schemes are based around trying to maximize the potential of other positions where our players, the typical body types that we get, suit those positions more. We try and build around that.
Perfect. And nicely brought me back on track. So how do you adjust the playbook based on the personnel you get? So
I mean, I've been quite fortunate. I've had quite a good rounded background of different playbooks and stuff that I've been coached. So I've played under and other people have coached. Then I've been part of the system and coached them. And I know there's certain things that I've played in or coached other places just won't fly here because we just don't have the people to do it. Which is why because we've got smaller players typically, and even the guys we get on the at least on say defensive side of the ball, defensive linemen that we get usually still smaller but maybe more agile. So we don't try and get into a gap control kind of scheme. We try and shoot the gaps. We try and get through the gap as quickly as possible. Try either get into the backfield or at least get into the gap itself, and then depending on what say the offense is doing, say adjust to suit really the blocking scheme. But yeah, we'll gap shoot on the defensive line. Linebacker wise, we will say we keep things quite simple because again, the personnel that we get, often people haven't played before. We try and keep it nice and simple. Linebackers, of course, you can have all sorts of you get kind of suckered into the background, so you're pulling linemen, motions this way, that way, kind of stuff. It's really easy to get kind of lost of what you're doing. So we will say try and keep it nice and simple. Go like you have one gap, you've got one gap responsibility. If, for example, the run's not going through that gap, it's either if it's not going to your gap and it's going to your side, flow across and help because the runner's going outside of your gap. You've got to get underneath to help the run support. If they do cut it back inside, if it is to your gap, come downhill, hit your gap, and stop the run right there. DBs, say we typically run our base is a 4-2-5. So we typically have, but say we have two corners, two strong safeties, and a free safety that will sit kind of one high look. Most of the time, so even as I know a lot of people like to run a 4-2-5, but like to do a two high look. We try and keep it one high, to keep it as simple as possible for the DBs, because then, against sort of the offenses that we see most often, then they quite often spread teams or doubles. So we'll go, okay, right, we'll have a pass strength to one side. And then that side usually is where the free safety will roll across to. And from there, we'll say sort it out.
Perfect. I mean, one of the things you mentioned that sort of struck home with me is sort of if you've got a decent athlete that's quite aggressive but doesn't know the sport at all, play him on the defensive line to start with, and
Yeah.
as he learns the game, then you can move him back into linebacker. And conversely, sometimes a linebacker that's overthinking and just stick him on the line, he doesn't have the time to. He just reacts and uses his physical skills. Yeah.
I mean, in general, we just try and keep the playbook as simple as possible with regards to their responsibilities. And they were fortunate that the players that we typically get, I mean, they're very academic. They've got an incredible, say, ability to process information. They can get through the information quickly, but sometimes they can be not so sure about the decision that they should be making. So we try and cut the number of decisions they need to make. I think that's what I kind of felt when I've played in zone systems. I've had to think about lots of things. I'm going, okay, the slot receiver's running out. What's the number one receiver doing? Are they running in? Is the running back coming out? Yes or no? And you get caught in sort of deer in the headlights kind of thing. And we just try and keep it really simple for them. Go like, right, you've got one job pretty much. And depending on what that one person you're reading is, will dictate the next thing. You either stick with him or you go, you check. You'll kind of go through a progression list. Go check, 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 check. If they do this, go to next step. If they do this, skip, kind of thing. So kind of a bit like a computer program in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. And then it's going to be difficult without a whiteboard, but can you give us an overview on that coverage you were talking about?
Yeah. So we run a quarters. It's a quarters coverage man read, probably popularized most by TCU for the last I don't know how many years, and Gary Patterson. But so the concept is we basically the quarters. So you have split the kind of the deep portion of the field into quarters, instead of let's say 2 or 3 for cover 2 and cover 3. And then depending on the number of defensive backs, you basically are dealing, say, filling in those quarter, you say you have quarter responsibility. What we do is we break the field down to, say, two sides. We have a read side and an away side. The read side is what we call designate as our passing strength, and that can be dependent on if teams run a tight end, if it'll be like tight end, number of vertical receiving threats, and a number of receiving threats in general. That will dictate our read side. And then we have an away side, which is like our pass, like weak side. Depending what package we're in, whether running our 4-2-5, 3-4-4, or our 5-2-4, we'll change up, say, what kind of cuts. Say within these halves, we have different sub coverages depending on what opposition we have, say what formation oppositions come out in and what the personnel we have. So, for example, in our 4-2-5 and our base, if a team comes out in doubles and we have, say, doubles on both sides, we'll call it to, let's say the running back is to the left-hand side. We'll say basically kind of a strong left, strong left, strong left. Then we'll have a coverage call so if we have the strong side, we'll designate it. If we have against if we have a two on two receiver side, quite often what we'll do is we'll bring the free safety across, and we'll have the strong safety come down, play like 3-by-2 alignment outside the number 2 receiver. The free safety will be like 8-by-2 inside the number 2 receiver. The corner will be inside shade on the number 1 receiver, about 7 yards deep. And basically the strong safety and the free safety will read that number 2 receiver, and the corner is pretty much, say, pure man on the number 1 receiver. Depending whether the number 2 receiver then, if the number 2 receiver sort of releases past 5 yards, our strong safety, our free safety will give a push call. So we'll tell our strong safety to drop off in coverage, so stop following the number 2 receiver, and the free safety will pick up the number 2 receiver and stay with them. And then the strong safety will look for basically work underneath. So either the number 1 receiver maybe coming in, or the running back coming out the backfield, or something along those lines. Basically, if the running, quite often we'll have like the running back comes out the backfield, we have an automatic push call. So we'll say, right, strong safety, dump the number 2 receiver, you follow the number 1, say you follow the running back. Free safety is 1-on-1 on the number 2.
Seem to have frozen.
Receiver, corners number is 1-on-1. Oh, yeah, I've got you back.
Oh yeah, sorry, you froze a little bit there.
Yeah, no problem.
You were on the running back.
Yeah, so then strong safety is 1-on-1 on the running back, which leaves our linebackers are basically just extra help in pass coverage, which frees them up to we can, if we have a very mobile QB, we can easily QB spy with them. That's no problem. They're not going to be actively looking. They're not responsible for anyone in the pass game. They're there as really help if they're not blitzing or if they're not given a QB spy responsibility. And on the backside of it, or the backside of our read side, where we're playing sort of our 2-on-1 coverage on the number 2 receiver, we play 2-on-2. We have the other strong safety will roll back to 8-by-1 inside the number 2 receiver, and then the corner will be 7-by-1 outside, so 7 yards deep, one outside the number 1 receiver, and they're both reading the number 2 receiver there. And basically they'll give if the number 2 receiver releases past 5 yards, then the strong safety's got the number 2 receiver man on man, and the corner's got number 1 receiver man on man, unless the number 2 receiver breaks out before sort of 5 yards. Then we give a wheel call, which tells the corner to come down and pick up the number 2 receiver coming out, and then the strong safety picks up the number 1 receiver wherever they've gone.
Oh, perfect. So I got a couple of questions on that.
Yeah,
Firstly, for sort of newer watchers, can you just talk about numbering the receivers and how you do that?
yeah. Okay, so numbering receivers works from say outside in. So from the widest receiver, they're designated the number one to say, so kind of split the field down the middle. You have the number one receivers, the furthest outside on each side. Then the next eligible receiver in is the number two, and the third one in is the number three, and then there's the number four receiver if they're running, I don't know, quads, or if there's a running back in the backfield to the trip side.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And communication. I mean, that's obviously critical. Does that take
Yes,
a while to get going?
that is possibly what to say the biggest thing that we emphasize is communicate, communicate, communicate. If we don't, if say the communication isn't there, it's tough to carry out the play and coverage well. So that's something that we rep an awful lot. We try and stress the guys during practice. We make their sort of during when we're doing on air or say indies, we really make sure that they're vocal and they're constantly practicing sort of they've given the calls, say shouting out, say the read and the away side, the coverage that we're running, that kind of stuff, the push and the wheel calls, because if they don't get used to doing it, it's fine for them to know what to do, but of course there is the relationship between most commonly say the free safety and the strong safety, and one of the strong safeties in the corner. They're not we're not telepathic unless they've got that kind of that feel and that. I mean, if they played for a long time and they kind of know, they sort of have that instinct and they know that's thoroughly impressive. But I've never had that, so we constantly tell them communicate, communicate, communicate. You need to say what's happening. I mean, that's sort of the big thing that I've always said, even to say to my linebackers and the DBs, shout out the formation at the start. Get yourself going mentally about communicating. Shout what the formation you're seeing coming out in front of you. Is it a motion? The running back coming out? Is a QB? Is a QB say pointing out one of the linebackers? Are they to say mark them out? Communicate everything, because then that will get everything going for the rest of the play.
Perfect. And who would call the push call? Would that be the player pushing initially, or you'd have this?
The push call is for sort of when we have 3-on-2 matchup in coverage. That's the push calls always from the free safety, as they're the one say over the top and deep. So they'll give the push call, and the strong safety just listens. And as soon as they hear the push call, they're going and looking for anything else. And on the opposite side, on the 2-on-2 side, it's the strong safety that gives the wheel call to the corner, because the corner's the one who's coming down.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And just sort of changing tact a little bit. So how I imagine recruitment at Oxford is certainly different than at Hearts. But what sort of
Yeah.
advantages and challenges does it give you?
It's challenging in the sense that, I mean, as said, Oxford is a massively academic university, and the people that come to you to Oxford and that are say physically gifted most often will go to teams like rugby union, or they'll go to rowing or that kind of thing. It was previously quite a big pull because of that, and because they had the Blues say awards, so you'd end up with an Oxford full blue at the end of the year if you were a high achiever and you did well in the varsity and that kind of stuff. So that was sort of a hard thing to pull guys to come and play American football. But say that's recently starting to change. We've been awarded a half blue, we're now half blue sport, so we have a bit more pull as a club, which is nice. And our club, I'd say the current president and the previous ones have done a real good job trying to change that and give us a bit of a better footing in the hierarchy of sports at the university, let's say, which, yes, it has made it difficult, because and especially when say we have a quite good population of American students that come over, but often the issue is that they're either here for like a term or maybe a year at tops. So whilst they might have playing experience and stuff, but they're not around for very long. So we're always quite wary. So let's say getting them, say, into the team, of course, it's always massively valuable getting them in because they have a wealth of experience that they can bring to the team and their teammates to try and sort of help them up. But we just don't get them for the 3, 4, 5 years or so that would typically get out of a university student. So it's hard to try and potentially develop sort of a defense and a team and a culture, potentially, because you have constantly people appearing and disappearing, because they're only here for a year or a term or so. But on the plus side is that as the sport is growing ever more popular, we're getting, say, year on year, we're getting more and more players who have played before at junior level, and that's invaluable, really, because previously where we have a team and we'd be lucky to get, I think, 1 or 2 players that were British that played before, where we're now getting maybe, say, 5 to 10 tops. It's a big difference, because then we can skip a lot of the sort of the introductory phase of this is American football, this is the defense, this is the terminology, this is how we do things, this is why we do things this way, and it has helped massively. But upside of them is being incredibly clever and being able to, say, process a lot of information very quickly. So with regards to them, so trying to learn a playbook as such, no problem at all. It's more there's more them, so they get the understanding of how the playbook works and how it relates to the game. That's where it struggles a bit more.
Perfect. Yeah. When I speak to American coaches, I always say if we get a player that's played before, it's like a 5-star recruit for us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So tomorrow I'm going to be talking to coaches from a traditionally sort of larger squad, so they're going to have different challenges. And I was coaching at a traditionally large squad, so we had a big squad, and often our challenge was retention, because the first year guys, unless they were really gifted athletes, they didn't tend to play much.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm only making a presumption here, is it easier for you once you've got someone in because you've got a smaller squad so they get more game time, or
In general,
not?
I'd say yes, because it's one of these things where I think we all know it's like you kind of get playing, you get into games, so you get the bug, and you're like, oh, I like this, I like the team, I like the environment, that kind of stuff. So in that sense, I'd say yes, it probably is easier to retain people who have already joined and they've played a decent amount. I mean, of course, it's a bit of of course, we have to trade off, because if we get people who just physically need time to develop to be able to play, it can be harder for them in a similar way to being a rookie on a larger squad. I know I was a rookie at Loughborough, and my first year I think I had, I don't know, maybe 10 snaps in a game. But then of course as you develop and whatever, it's you're more likely to get on the pitch and enjoy playing and stick with it with the team. But yeah, we do get those players who they maybe aren't physically there yet when they join, and it is tougher to keep them around. But fortunate enough, we've been fortunate to have a S&C coach called Ben Wright, who's been with us for a couple of years. So he's been working with sort of some of a lot of the rookies to try and make sure that they're game ready as quickly as possible, to give them the best opportunity to get into the game and be an impact and get that bug to play and stay with the team.
Yeah, I find it really intriguing, the different challenges for the different squads,
Mhm.
and certainly, I mean, we've seen a couple of teams create sort of varsity squads now, which
Oh yeah,
is probably the best thing in the world, but I'm sure they've got challenges as well, a number of coaches,
yeah,
practice time, and
massively.
things like that. So
No, it's one of those things I sort of think about, say, yeah, the Nottingham and sort of the UE squads, and I go, yeah, it must be massive, but I don't know how. It'd be interesting to get kind of at least Jason Scott's. I don't know how, if he gets involved with the second team, or how, if they have a whole different, say, coaching staff for that second team. It's an interesting, say, I'd be interested to find out how that whole thing works, because I mean, I think even getting together a good, like, coaching staff for, say, one team, and getting that all sorted is quite a challenge. But let alone doing it for two.
definitely, and I'm sure when Jason finds some time, we can get him back on there and do that. Perfect. Thank you very much. We like to keep these reasonably short and sweet, so thank you for that. Do you want to sort of promote Oxford or?
Well, I mean, it's always. I mean, as a university, it's great. I mean, as a club, we're constantly developing, and we're constantly trying to get. Gotta say, we have a decent number of coaches, but if there's anyone in, say, the Oxfordshire area who's interested in coaching, offense, defense, special teams, by all means, get in contact with us, and we will see what we can do. I mean, we're trying to, say, develop a. We have a the head coach Ian Hiscock has a 5-year plan, and we're trying to, say, put together a good groundwork to create a real kind of, hopefully, a football program that will be, say, strong for the years to come. So hopefully we can get some people who buy into that vision, and really want to help the team progress, and that we can move forward and have a top flight team and coaching staff.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much, Simon.